Welcome to class 2C, where we're going to be going a step further in our learning. Here we're going to be making a dress, a sleeveless dress, something that you can wear around in the house and something that you can also style up and wear casually out. So the process will be similar to some of the things we have done in class 2A and 2B. So you can make reference to some of the processes in the previous class to apply in this one. But there'll be some slight additional changes, but make sure you watch carefully every step of the way as we cut and we join the pieces together. So let's go and cut and sew. First, we get all our materials together as usual: tape, scissors, hemming gum, needle and thread, pin, chalk, our ruler and our fabric. The next thing is to determine the quantity of fabric to use. So this is going to be measured from the self edge. You know, it's a dress, and I'm going to divide it into two, one for the front and one for the back. So you use your hip measurement to determine what you're going to make. For example, my hip is 44, so half of 44 is 22, but I need to add 2 inches extra. That's 24, and then another 2 inches extra, that's 26, for the ease and for the seam allowance. So it's going to be 26 in 2 places. So 26 for the first half, 26 for the second half. So that's what I measured here, and I'm going to divide it into 2. So the wideness is 26 inches wide for each rectangle. So you'll notice that I'm not cutting it on the self edge, I'm cutting it across the Ankara fabric. So the self edge is at the top and at the bottom. So that's how I'm using this particular fabric. You see, I've cut 2 pieces. One is for the front and the other is for the back. So I'm going to take one of those 2 pieces that I cut and fold it, because now I want to get the length of the dress. So you can see it's from top to bottom. The self edge of the clothes, the self edge of the fabric is at the top, the other self edge is at the bottom. So I folded this into 2, and then I want to measure the length of the dress. So the length may vary from person to person, but general standard is 40 inches. So if you want it to be shorter than 40 inches, you can reduce it. But for this particular one, I'm going to be using 40 inches. So 40 inches is what I marked from the top to the base. So here is the base, and then here is the upper area. So the length of the dress is 40 inches from top to the base. So that's what I measured there, 40 inches. So I'm going to also cut that off. So that would be the final length of the dress. Then I'll trim off the upper part where I marked. That's like an excess area. So this is the final point. Then the next thing is I'll measure 8.5 inches from the top. That 8.5 inches will serve as our bust line. So that's the line where we take the bust measurement. So here I take quarter of the bust measurement plus 1. That's 10 inches plus 1. That's 11 inches. That's what I marked. Then at the top, I'm going to measure 8 inches. So you'll be wondering how I came about that 8 inches. It's just the bust measurement minus 2. So you could draw a slant. That slant represents our armhole, and we're going to be using that to finish. So the next one, you draw another line. You measure 7 inches from the first line. Then the next one, you measure 8.5 inches. My hand is not straight there, so just make sure yours is straight. So the first one is 8.5, then you measure 7, then you measure 8.5, so that you can use it to get the shape. Make sure that you use your ruler. I was using my free hand there to draw, so it's not looking straight. So those 3 lines, very, very important. So on the third line is the hip measurement. That's where you apply the hip measurement. So that's quarter of the hip measurement plus 1. My hip measurement is 44. That's 11 plus 1. That is 12. So 12 is what I will mark, and not 11, because I want a loose fit. On the bust, I marked 11. So but then on the waist, I'm just going to mark 10. That's 11 minus 1, just to give it a curvy shape. Now that's the waistline. I'm going to mark 10 inches so I can connect the bust to the waist to the hip. I'm just going to draw a shape that looks like a dress and curve it down. You can see the curve that I made. So that's basically it. The seam allowance is already there because I calculated it when I was measuring the quantity of fabric. So I'll just cut out that shape and allow 1 inch seam allowance that I will use in joining the dress at the front and at the back. And you can see that slant we also did for the neck, where we measured 8 inches at the top. So this shape we have cut, we're going to duplicate it on the other piece. Remember, we worked only on one rectangle, so we're just going to use the rectangle we have cut as a pattern for the one that we have not cut. We're just going to place it on it and just copy and paste and bring out the shape just like we did So just a little thought on the slants. Remember I said I measured 8 inches. Now that 8 inches is quarter of the bust measurement minus 2 inches. So my bust measurement is 40, quarter of 40 is 10, 10 minus 2 is 8, and that's how I came about the 8 inches. So depending on what your bust measurement is, that will determine what you would cut at the upper part. I'm referring to this slant that is up here at the neck. What I used for mine is 8, so depending on your bust measurements, you use accordingly. So now we have the 2 piece, the front and the back. So now we're just going to go to the ironing table and iron the necessary parts. So I'm marking the wrong side of the fabric because the Ankara fabric, you may not know which one is the good side or the wrong side, so I just had to mark it. So we're now on the ironing table. So the first thing we need to iron is that slant. Yes, that's that slant I was talking about. That represents our armhole. So you first of all fold it and crease it like we would normally do, and then insert your hemming gum to finish that area. Fold it and you iron the hemming gum to finish the area. We're going to do the same thing to the other side. We're also going to apply it to the front piece and the back piece. So because they are the same, so you can use any for the front piece or the back piece. So you place your hemming gum inside, you cut it off, you fold, and then you press with the iron. Make sure it's steaming hot. So that's basically what we need to do to that slant. And then after doing that, we'll still need to fold the upper area. This upper area, we need to fold it. So you're just going to measure like 2 inches at that upper area, because that's the area that will stand for our neckline. You just fold it and crease it. You don't need to put the hemming gum there because we're going to use it for something separate. So we have done it to the front piece and the back piece. We've used the hemming gum and then we folded it. So there's no need to put hemming gum on that other side, because it represents the neck area. That's the upper part. So now we want to join the front and the back together with our regular running stitch. So we place the good side to the good side. In other words, you're going to spread the fabric, the good side facing you, and then you're going to place the good side facing the fabric together. I hope you understand that. So we're going to stitch 1 inch according to the shape that we just cut on both ends. 1 inch according to the shape. So good side of the fabric is facing the good side of the fabric. So then we start stitching. You can start stitching from the base or from the bottom, but I think I'll start stitching from the base all the way to the top. Not stitching from the base to the bottom, stitching from the base to the top, I mean to say. All right, so now we're stitching from the base and we're using our regular running stitch. You can use the back stitch if you want, but the back stitch will take a longer time, and because it's a loose fit, the regular running stitches is fine, but you need to double your thread. Don't use a single thread so that it will not break, so the stitches will be strong. So you just use your regular running stitch and you run it all the way till the armhole, to the upper area where you have the bust line region. So you run it all the way through, and make sure that when you're stitching you keep spreading, because when you are using running stitches there's a possibility for it to form some kind of gathers. So make sure that as you are stitching you are spreading it. Keep spreading it and stitching and spreading until you get to the final portion at the upper parts where you finalize what you're sewing. That's exactly what I'm doing here. I'm about to end. You'll see that as I end I'll spread it here. So you have to keep spreading it like that, and then you finalize. You will knot it twice as usual to secure that. So this stitch is going to be done on the left and on the right, on both sides where we cut the shape. So after doing this, we're going to stitch that place we folded, the portion we didn't add the hemming gum to. Remember, we ironed the neck area because we want to pass something to tie in that area. So we'll fold it, and at the very edge you're going to stitch at the edge. You do your regular running stitch because we need to leave a hole where we're going to pass some fabric through. That fabric we're going to pass through is what is going to give us the sleeve of the dress. So we'll do our regular running stitch on that point too. We'll do it from the beginning all the way to the end. That's the area where we did not add the hemming gum. We just folded the crease, and then we keep stitching all the way till we get to the end. We're going to do this same thing for the front piece and the back piece. Remember, the front piece and the back piece, they are exactly the same. So whatever we do to the front piece, we also have to duplicate on the back piece so that we have the same effect. So we're going to stitch from one end to the other end, but remember there has to be a hole. So you're not going to stitch too high. You're going to stitch at the very lower part of the fold. and then when you are done, you create a loop and you secure that stitch twice as usual, and when you are done, you just cut it off, and that's about it. So when we're done with this, the next thing is to iron. You can see the hole here. We're going to pass a fabric through that hole. So now we're on the ironing table where we're ironing the seams. So it's very important for you to always open your seam and iron. Anytime you join anything, go turn the fabric to the wrong side, open your seam and iron. That's what we're doing here. The seam on the neck, the seam on the side. When you do it on the wrong side, you turn it over to the good side and you iron it. You do the same. You iron out the shape that we stitched. That's the shape from the bust, the waist to the hip. You iron that curve out very nicely so that you have a very good finish from the dress. So now we actually need to work on the hem of the dress. So far we haven't worked on the hem of the dress. It's at this point we fold the hem. In previous classes we would have actually worked on the hem before joining the front and the back, but in this case it's different. Now we are folding the hem and then preparing to put our hemming gum. So you first of all fold, iron to form a crease. After the crease has formed, then you now insert your hemming gum. So that's the base of the dress, and we're forming the crease with the iron. So once we're done, we'll carefully insert our hemming gum on the hem, and we'll do it round carefully so that it finishes the base of the dress very, very neatly. When you get to the side where it has the joining, make sure it is open. Don't fold it towards one side. The seam shouldn't face left or right so that area will not be bulky. That's the ideal way to actually sew. So when you get to the side seam and you're fixing the hem, make sure that you open the seam. So that's about the last piece of our hemming gum we want to put on the hem. So once we insert that and iron, we're done with that. So we can just re-emphasize the hemming gum by pressing again, and that's just about it. So the next thing we need to do now is to prepare the strap. Now the fabric from this strap is the off-cut from when I was cutting the length of the dress. For the Ankara fabric is 45 inches, but what I cut off was 40 inches. So the remaining 5 inches is what I folded into 2 here, and then I'm cutting it into 2. So I'm cutting it into 2 so that I can make it a bit longer, because it was 26 I used for front and back, so it's not long enough. So I need to double it. So I'm using the hemming gum to stick it together. So if you want to stitch it, you can stitch it, but I'm just using the hemming gum to make this production process faster. So but it's okay to also use your hemming gum. You can then fold it into 2. Then you don't have to use the fabric for the strap. You can use a velvet trim, you can use a ribbon, you can use whatever it is that you prefer, but for this I want to use the fabric for the strap. This that we are preparing is what we want to pass into that hole that we created, that we stitched. So we're going to put a pin, a safety pin at the edge to help us pass it through that hole from one side all the way to the other side till it comes out on the other end. We're going to do it to the front piece and to the back piece. You can see it has come out on the other end, front piece and back piece. So once we do that, we're going to tie it together. So when we tie it together, that forms the strap for one side of the dress, and then we'll tie the other part together too, and then it forms the strap of the other side of the dress. And that's about it. We're done with this dress, so I'm just going to try it on. Wow, this is the final look of our dress. Very simple, very nice. You can style it up, style it down, wear a jacket, wear it out casually, and so that's basically it. I thought to add a final note to the production of this dress. Now, in determining the quantity of fabric you want to use, if your bust measurement is larger than your hip measurement, then it is your bust measurement you should use to determine the quantity, because it is expected that on the woman's body the hip measurement is the largest, but it happens in some cases where the bust is bigger than the hip. So let's just say, for example, your bust is 46. You divide that into 2. That's for front and back, that's 23. Then you add 2 inches to the 23 for ease, that's 25. Then you add another 2 inches to the 25, that's 27. The extra 2 inches is for the seam allowance to join the front and the back on the side. So that is what will determine the quantity. So just take note, if your bust measurement is larger than your hip measurement, make sure you use your bust measurement to determine the quantity of the fabric you use. You can try yours and do your assignment, and let's see what you can create.